Good Sunday morning, everybody. This is the Iceman, the man with the plan, the man with the knowledge, the man with the wrestling news on the Iceman's Return YouTube channel. I'm going to put up a video here today before I go to work. And this is going to be a segment one video. Probably it'll be either 2 or 3 segments. Josh from Insidewrestlingtruth, just a short while back, was going to interview me on Skype, and he's had some video issues. So he sent me some questions, and he asked me if I, felt comfortable about actually, answering these questions and giving my thoughts and my opinions. And I said, sure, not a problem. So we're going to get right into it. The first question was, what were your first memories of professional wrestling? Well, to be quite honest with you, I started really getting involved in watching, or before I started watching wrestling, I used to buy the wrestling magazines because, you heard about wrestling, and back in the middle to the late 70s, there wasn't really, much on TV for us to watch. We did have a channel, Channel 20 WATR, back then out of Waterbury, Connecticut, which showed All-Star Wrestling, which was the WWF, and they also had, I just think it was the WWF Wrestling. And, like I said, I started buying wrestling magazines, got familiar with a lot of the superstars, and didn't really realize that there were so many different territories around back then. We had the AWA wrestling a little bit later, and we had NWA wrestling, and of course we had the WWF. And so actually one day I was out with some friends, and I came home. It was on the weekend, and I went to see my mom, talk to my mom, and she was watching wrestling on Channel 20, WATR, and we were talking about it and whatnot, and one of her favorite wrestlers back in the day was Ivan Putski, the Polish Power. He had that, that punch. And, I sat down, we were talking, and I started watching it. And I remember seeing the likes of Tony Garea, Tino Santana, Bob Backlund. I think this was towards the very, very end of Bruno Sammartino's career. I saw Pedro Morales, Kenny Patera, Superstar Billy Graham. So it wasn't until towards the late 70s that I really, it really caught my eye, because I was able to watch it on TV. And it's sort of funny because back then the exposure was very, very limited, but maybe that's the reason why I couldn't, wait for the following week to end up, watching more of this. And then later on, once I got a glimpse of NWA wrestling, it's like everything just fell together. I just fell in love with it, because that wrestling to me was like the biggest of its time, and I really enjoyed watching all that. So that was probably my first memories of professional wrestling, sitting down with my mom and seeing the likes, of Garea and Santana. I remember Mr. Fuji, Lou Albano, the Grand Wizard, Freddie Blassie. You had all these heel managers out there, so it sort of made it fun, so anyway, moving on. My favorite wrestler of all time. Geez, this is tough because once I was reading the magazines, and this was just prior to being able to see NWA wrestling televised. I read so much about Ric Flair, and it's just like he was so built up in the magazines. They made him the best, and so I sort of just started, growing this attachment to wanting to see Ric Flair. And throughout most of my wrestling, career, as far as watching professional wrestling, Ric Flair was my favorite wrestler. And probably until maybe the last 10 years. And I think maybe, the last 10, 15 years of Ric Flair. When he had that match with Shawn Michaels, and it was supposed to be, where he ended his career, maybe it should have ended there. But ever since then, I think he sort of tainted himself a little bit. I think he sort of messed up his legacy a bit. Because I want the memories of the old Ric Flair. To beat a man, you got to beat the man. Space, mountain, high flying, airplane riding. Back in the days when he was with the Four Horsemen, Ole and Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. To me, those were the best days and the best memories for me as far as Ric Flair. I've had a couple others, really since. I was a big Bret Hart fan when he was in the WWF, but Ric Flair pretty much was the guy. And now, as far as the present day favorite wrestler in the WWE, it's John Cena, and I grew on CM Punk as well. Took me a long time to get really into CM Punk, but yeah, I miss him now. But favorite wrestler of all time. If you could take away the last 15 years of Ric Flair, I would go with Ric Flair without a doubt. To me, he was just the guy. And, everybody followed Ric Flair. So, all right, favorite match of all time. Well, I think for me, one of the favorite matches that I've watched, I believe it was a 2000 Royal Rumble where Triple H, the champion, faced Mick Foley, Cactus Jack. And this match was like brutal. They both gave it their all. I mean, Cactus Jack came out with the 2x4 with the barbed wire wrapped around it. These guys just beat the hell out of each other. And this is one of those matches that stood out in my eyes for, a real long time. That's probably my favorite match of all time. I have, secondary matches. Ric Flair and Ronnie Garvin in a cage with Precious on the line. Back in the 80s, that was a really phenomenal match. And also the Triple H Undertaker match with Shawn Michaels as referee at WrestleMania a few years ago. I thought that was a very, very good and well played out match as well. But yeah, I have to go along with Foley and Triple H at the Royal Rumble 2000 as my favorite match of all time. I mean, it didn't get any better than that. I just thought it was totally remarkable. Some of my favorite gimmicks, past and present. I'm really not into gimmicks. I really don't know where to go from there because I'm not a gimmick person. But all in all, if I were to choose, it would, tables, ladders, and chairs. We've seen so much exciting wrestling with the tables, especially in years past with the Dudley Boys. The Hardy Boys were great using the ladder. Edge and Christian as well. So probably tables, ladders, and chairs would be my favorite gimmick, mostly. So yeah, that's the thing nowadays too. I also like cage matches, but we very rarely see cage matches anymore. And when we do have the cage matches, they are more like PG rated now than what they used to be. Because if you were any wrestler with any kind of platinum blonde hair or anything, and you're in that ring, you always were to see blood. I mean, whether it be Ric Flair or Ronnie Garvin, you always saw blood. Dusty Rhodes. But yeah, tables, ladders, and chairs. Pretty much probably my favorite because it's so diversified. You can do so many things, with the ladders, the tables, the chairs, and, we still see headshots in TNA, but we don't see many headshots anymore in the WWE because there's been that injury prone thing with concussions and whatnot. So, but anyway, this is segment 1. These are questions asked to the Iceman by Josh from Inside Wrestling Truth. It's Inside Wrestling Truth YouTube channel. Check him out. He does some great videos and he does some great interviews. So We will come up with segment 2 in the next couple days. And Josh, I hope you enjoyed my responses. And we just move on. Peace out, everybody. Have yourself a great Sunday.